They said the tunnel collapse was an accident. They lied. The Silver Palms grease-stained clock read 11:47 p.m. when Amina Rowe finally untied her apron and stepped into the rain. Her feet screamed after 9 hours of serving coffee to people who didn't tip, but the cold felt good against her skin. She lit a cigarette she didn't want, just to have 3 minutes that belonged to no one else. Then the world turned orange. The explosion tore through the Interstate 9 tunnel like a dragon's breath, a rolling wall of fire that devoured asphalt and steel, and everything human caught in its maw. The shockwave hit her chest before the sound reached her ears, knocking the cigarette from her lips. Glass rained down from the diner's windows. Car alarms shrieked in a demonic chorus. Amina should have run the other way. Instead, she sprinted toward the inferno. The tunnel entrance belched black smoke that clawed at her throat. She could hear them, the screaming, the prayers, the final desperate sounds people make when they realize they're about to die. Most were already dead. The first 3 cars had been vaporized. The 4th was a skeleton of flame. But the 5th, a silver Mercedes wrapped around a concrete support beam, still had someone inside. She saw his hand first, pale fingers pressed against the spider-webbed window, smearing blood across the glass. "Get out!" Amina yanked at the door handle. It didn't budge. The roof had crumpled inward, trapping him like an insect in a closing fist. "Leave." His voice came through the broken window, surprisingly steady for a man about to burn alive. "The fuel tank. I don't take orders from dying men." She grabbed a chunk of concrete and smashed the remaining glass, reaching through to unlock the door from inside. The metal groaned but gave way. Up close, she could see his face now, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that held something she couldn't name. Blood ran from his temple in twin rivers. His leg was pinned beneath the crushed dashboard. "My briefcase," he gasped. "Back seat. You have to—" "Forget your briefcase." Amina wedged herself into the impossible space, bracing her feet against the doorframe. She could feel the heat now, close enough to sear her lungs with every breath. "On 3, you push with everything you have left." She didn't wait for 3. Amina pulled with strength born from years of hauling 50-pound bags of potatoes, from rage at a world that kept trying to break people like her, from some primal part of her brain that refused to let another person die tonight. Something tore his pant leg, his skin. She didn't know and didn't care. He came free with a sound like ripping fabric, and they tumbled backward onto the asphalt as the Mercedes erupted in flames. She dragged him 30 feet before her legs gave out. They collapsed together in the rain, gasping, covered in ash and blood that wasn't all his. Behind them, the tunnel groaned like a dying beast. Sirens wailed closer, but still too far away. Concrete cracked above the tunnel mouth, and the roof sagged like the explosion had woken something that had been waiting to fall. The man turned his head to look at her, really look at her, and Amina saw it the moment he memorized her face, the moment everything changed. "Who are you?" she whispered. He smiled, blood on his teeth. "Someone who's going to ruin your life." He wasn't joking. The fluorescent lights of Street Catherine's emergency department turned Amina's skin the color of a corpse. Ash clung to her hair like gray snow that wouldn't melt. Someone had wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, but she couldn't stop shaking. Not from cold, from the realization that she'd almost died for a stranger whose name she didn't know. A nurse with kind eyes tried to clean the blood from Amina's hands. Most of it belonged to him, the man from the tunnel, now somewhere behind those swinging double doors where doctors worked miracles or delivered bad news. Amina had given her statement to the police 3 times. Each telling felt less real than the last. She should leave, go home, shower until the smell of smoke finally washed away. Instead, she waited. 4 hours later, he emerged in a wheelchair pushed by a woman who looked like she could kill with her car keys. The man, her tunnel stranger, had 23 stitches across his temple, his left leg wrapped in enough bandages to supply a small war, and those same dark eyes that now locked onto Amina with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. "You're still here." Not a question. A statement that carried weight she didn't understand. "I wanted to make sure you didn't die after I went through all that trouble." Amina stood, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Seemed like a waste of effort. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "June Park." He extended his hand. The IV needle was still taped to his wrist. "And you are the woman who refused to let me burn. Amina Rowe." His grip was firm despite everything. "And you were the idiot who told me to leave. I was trying to be noble. Try harder next time." That made him laugh, a real sound that transformed his face from beautiful to devastating. The woman behind the wheelchair cleared her throat with the subtlety of a gunshot. June waved her off without looking away from Amina. "Miss Rowe, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen very carefully." He leaned forward, and suddenly the hospital corridor felt too small, too warm, too charged with something Amina couldn't name. "You saved my life tonight. In my world, that creates a debt that can never be repaid. It also creates a bond that cannot be broken. I don't want your money." "I'm not offering money." His eyes held hers, and Amina saw the truth there before he spoke it. "You saved my life. That makes you mine." The words hit her like a second explosion. She laughed because it was absurd, because this man was clearly still in shock, because the alternative that he meant every syllable was impossible. "You're delusional. They probably gave you the good painkillers." "I have never been more clear-headed in my life." June's voice dropped to something darker, something that bypassed her brain and went straight to her spine. "You ran into fire for me, Amina Rowe. You chose my life over your safety. People don't do that. Not for strangers. Not in this world. I'm a waitress who makes bad decisions. Don't read into it. I'm reading everything into it." He reached up, his fingers barely brushing her wrist. The touch lasted 3 seconds. It burned hotter than the tunnel flames. "Go home. Rest. But know this, I will see you again. And when I do, I will show you exactly what it means to save a man like me." Amina pulled away, her heart hammering against her ribs. "A man like you? What does that even mean?" June's smile turned sharp. "It means you should have left me to burn," but his eyes said he was grateful she hadn't. The wheelchair woman, his assistant, bodyguard, something finally intervened, pushing June toward the private wing before Amina could respond. She watched him disappear through doors that required a keycard, into a world that didn't smell like grease and burnt coffee. Amina left the hospital as dawn broke over the city. She didn't look back, couldn't afford to. Men like that, beautiful, intense, clearly unhinged, were not part of her life plan, but his words followed her home. "That makes you mine." She told herself it was shock, trauma, the ramblings of a man who'd almost died. She told herself a lot of lies that morning. None of them stuck. Amina managed 6 hours of sleep plagued by dreams of fire and dark eyes before her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Miss Rowe?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "This is Sora Han, Mr. Park's executive assistant. He wanted to ensure you received proper medical attention after last night's incident. A car will arrive at your address in 40 minutes to transport you to our facility. I don't need. The explosion caused significant smoke inhalation. Mr. Park insists." The tone left no room for argument. "The appointment is already scheduled. Dr. Chen is expecting you." The line went dead. 38 minutes later, a black Mercedes sedan idled outside her apartment building. The driver wore a suit that cost more than her monthly rent. He opened the door without speaking, and Amina, against every survival instinct she possessed, got in. The facility turned out to be an entire floor of Providence Medical Center. Private wing, marble floors, art that belonged in museums. Dr. Chen was thorough, kind, and clearly accustomed to patients who arrived via mysterious luxury vehicles. He cleared her lungs, treated minor burns she hadn't noticed, and refused to discuss payment. "Already handled," he said with a smile that revealed nothing. Sora Han waited in the lobby. Mid-30s, razor-sharp suit, eyes that catalogued threats before they materialized. She handed Amina an envelope thick with papers. "Medical records for your files. And this, a business card, heavy stock, embossed letters. June Park, CEO, Park International Holdings. What does Park International do? Import-export, real estate development, private investments." Sora's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Park wanted to thank you personally, but he's currently in meetings. He hopes you'll join him for dinner Friday evening. I work Friday nights. I've spoken with your manager at the Silver Palm. You're scheduled off." Sora's smile was polite and terrifying. "A car will collect you at 7. She left before Amina could refuse. That afternoon, Amina did what any sensible person would do. She Googled him. June Park, CEO, Park International Holdings. Net worth, undisclosed, but estimated in 9 figures. Age, 34. Education, Wharton, though he dropped out junior year for reasons the internet wouldn't say. No social media presence, very few photographs. Then she found the Reddit threads. Park International is a front. Everyone in K-Town knows it. My cousin worked in their accounting department. Lasted 3 weeks before he quit. Wouldn't talk about what he saw. Organized crime. Has to be. Nobody makes that much money legitimately in import-export. Amina clicked deeper. Found a news article from 6 years ago. Federal investigation into Park International yields no charges. The details were vague, the tone suggestive. Money laundering allegations. Ties to international syndicates. Nothing proven, but smoke without fire didn't billow that thick. She stared at June's official company photo. The same sharp features, the same dark eyes, but in this image, he wore power like a second skin. This wasn't the man who'd bled in her arms. This was someone else entirely. A king, she thought. Or something more dangerous. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Wear something comfortable. I hate formality. J. Amina should have blocked the number. Should have called Sorahan and cancelled. Should have recognized the red flags waving like banners in a hurricane. Instead, she opened her closet and started looking for something to wear. The restaurant didn't have a sign. Just a red door in Koreatown that required a password June's driver provided to the man who answered. Inside, dark wood and darker secrets. 6 tables total, every one empty except theirs. June stood when she entered, and Amina's breath caught despite herself. Fitted black shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms. The stitches on his temple had been replaced with surgical strips. He moved with a slight limp, but carried himself like someone who'd forgotten what weakness meant. You came. He pulled out her chair himself. I'm still deciding if that was smart. It wasn't. June sat across from her, and his honesty felt like a weapon. But I'm grateful anyway. No menu appeared. The food simply arrived course after course of Korean cuisine that made the Silver Palms offerings taste like cardboard. Amina ate because it gave her something to do with her hands. June watched her with an attention that felt physical. I Googled you, she said finally, setting down her chopsticks. I'd be disappointed if you hadn't. Are the rumors true? Which ones? His smile was dangerous. That I'm wealthy? Yes. That I'm powerful? Yes. That I've built my empire on the backs of illegal operations? He leaned forward, and the candlelight turned his eyes to obsidian. What do you think, Amina? I think you're not denying it. I don't believe in lying to people I care about. June's hand crossed the table, not touching hers but close enough that she felt the heat. My family came to this country with nothing. My father died in a warehouse accident when I was 16, an accident that wasn't accidental. The company that killed him paid off the right people. We got nothing. No justice, no compensation, just a funeral we couldn't afford. His voice remained steady, but his jaw tightened. I built Park International from insurance money and ambition. Started legitimate, stayed legitimate for 3 years. Then I learned the rules of this world. The real rules, not the ones they print in business school textbooks. The powerful eat the weak, the connected prosper, the honest starve. So you became dishonest. I became effective. June's fingers finally touched hers, just the barest brush of skin. I moved money for people who couldn't use banks. I provided services for clients who valued discretion. I built relationships in places where law and order are suggestions, not requirements. And yes, I crossed lines, many lines. Amina should have pulled away, should have stood up and walked out, should have recognized this confession for what it was, a warning. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you, Amina Rowe, not just for a night, not just for a season. His grip tightened, and she felt the tremor in his hand, the first crack in his controlled facade. I want you in my life, in my world, and that world is dangerous and complicated and morally gray at best. You deserve to know what you're walking into. We've known each other for 4 days. I've known you for 1 moment. June's thumb traced circles on her palm. The moment you ran into fire for a stranger. Everything I've learned since then has only confirmed what I felt in that tunnel. You are extraordinary. You are brave. You are mine. You can't just claim people. I know. That's what makes this terrifying. He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with a reverence that felt like worship. I am giving you a choice, Amina. Walk away now, and I'll never contact you again. You'll be safe, free, untouched by my world. And if I stay, then I will love you with everything I have. I will protect you with everything I am. I will build you a life where you never have to serve coffee to people who don't see you again. His eyes burned, but I cannot promise you normal. I cannot promise you safe. I can only promise you me. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, Amina felt the future fracturing into 2 paths. The sensible one, and the impossible one. She thought about the silver palm, about aching feet and grease-stained uniforms and rent that ate her paycheck, about a life she was living by default, not by choice. Then she thought about June's hand on hers, about the way he looked at her like she was the only person in a crowded world, about the terrifying, intoxicating possibility that someone might actually mean it when they said mine. "I want to go on another date," she heard herself say. June's smile could have lit the city. "When?" "Tomorrow." "Done." They left the restaurant at midnight. June's driver waited, but June waved him off, and they walked through Koreatown's neon-soaked streets instead. He limped, but refused her arm, told her stories about growing up between two worlds, made her laugh, made her think, made her want. When they reached her apartment, June kissed her forehead nothing more and stepped back. "I'm going to marry you someday." He said it like a promise and a prayer. Amina should have laughed. Instead, she whispered, "Ask me in 6 months. I'll ask in 5. He did. 5 months wasn't long enough to become a person's whole world. Not in any sane universe. But sanity had burned up in that tunnel, along with the cars and the concrete and Amina's belief that life had to be small just because she'd been living it that way. June didn't date, like the men she'd known. He didn't vanish for 2 days and reappear with apologies. He didn't play games. He didn't pretend he wasn't watching, listening, memorizing. He showed up. Every time. There were dinners that felt like negotiations with fate private booths. Whispered confessions, the way strangers' eyes slid off him like they'd been trained to look away. There were small moments too. June walking her to her door in the rain, holding an umbrella over her like she mattered. June sending her a book he'd annotated with quiet notes in the margins. June sitting in the back of the Silver Palm in a hoodie and baseball cap, drinking bad coffee just to watch her work, looking up every time she laughed. She tried to keep him at the edges of her life. She tried to keep her rules. Don't get attached. Don't trust fast. Don't fall for men who move like they're used to being obeyed. She failed, because June didn't ask to be trusted. He earned it in blood and patience and the kind of honesty that hurt. "I did bad things," he told her on a beach night where the ocean sounded like distant applause. "I don't want to pretend I didn't. I don't want to be forgiven for things I haven't even admitted. But I'm telling you the truth now so you don't have to guess later." And one, "So you're confessing because you're, what? Trying to be noble?" she asked, because sarcasm was safer than fear. "I'm confessing because I'm serious about you," he said, and the seriousness in his voice made her stomach flip. "And because you ran into fire. You don't deserve a man who hides his smoke." 5 months of that of heat and truth and danger, dressed up as devotion, rearranged Amina's insides. She quit smoking, started sleeping through the night, started believing she could be more than the girl who worked until her bones ached and called it a life. June paid off her student loans without asking. Amina found out when the notification hit her email like a miracle. She confronted him in the penthouse he'd started letting her call ours. Rage and gratitude tangled so tight she could barely breathe. "You can't do that," she snapped. "You can't just erase my life like it's a bill." "I didn't erase you," June said quietly. "I removed a chain. It was my chain. It was keeping you in a cage you didn't choose." He stepped closer, eyes dark, voice softer. "Amina, you've spent your entire life surviving. I want you to start building." She hated that he was right. She hated that he saw her so clearly. So she made a deal with the devil. Because if she was going to accept anything from him, it would come with terms. "I'll pay you back," she said. "Every cent, even if it takes me 10 years. June's mouth curved into a rare, almost boyish smile. "Then I'll give you 10 years. The first time someone tried to scare her away, it didn't come with flashing lights or FBI windbreakers. It came with a shadow. Amina left a client meeting downtown and found a man leaning against her car, smoking, smiling like he was allowed to exist in her space. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. "Cute story," he said. "Waitress saves the king. Thinks she gets a fairy tale." Amina's hand went to her phone, but he was already shaking his head. "Tell Park we remember what he is," the man continued, voice smooth as oil. "Kings fall, and women who stand too close get crushed under the rubble." He flicked ash onto the pavement and walked away like he'd never been there. Amina drove straight to June. She expected rage, a weapon, a plan. She got stillness cold and controlled and terrifying. June listened, face unreadable, then pressed his forehead to hers like he was anchoring himself. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "This is the part I didn't want you to taste." "I already tasted it," she said. "In the tunnel." In the hospital. In every locked door you disappear behind. His eyes searched hers, and for the first time she saw fear in him. Real fear. Not for himself, but for her. I can end this, he said. I can disappear you. New name, new city, safe. No one would find you. You're not disappearing me, Amina said, furious that he even suggested it. I'm not a witness you relocate. I'm not a problem you solve. What are you then? He asked, voice rough. Amina swallowed hard. I'm the woman who ran into the fire. And I'm still here. Something in June's face cracked relief and hunger and gratitude all at once. That night, he didn't take her to a restaurant. He took her to the place where everything had begun. The Interstate 9 tunnel was repaired, reopened, rebranded, new lights, fresh paint. As if trauma could be covered like graffiti, they stood at the entrance, cars humming past. And Amina felt her pulse spike with the memory of orange light and screaming steel. I could have died there, she said. So could I, June replied. You said you were going to ruin my life. I did, he said, and his voice was softer than it had any right to be. I ruined the life you were settling for. He reached into his jacket pocket. The box was small, black, too ordinary for what it carried. Amina didn't open it right away. She stared at him instead, this man with blood history, with enemies in corners, with a world that didn't forgive softness. Is this the part where you claim me again? She asked. Because if she joked, she wouldn't have to admit her hands were shaking. June exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 5 months. No, he said. This is the part where I ask. He opened the box. A ring. Not ostentatious. Not a billboard. Simple, brutal elegance. Like a promise carved in stone. Marry me, he said. Not because you saved me, not because of debt. Because you chose me after knowing exactly what I am. Because you make me want to be better than the man my world expects me to be. Amina's throat tightened. June. I won't lie. He cut in, voice steady, eyes burning. Being with me is risk. It's scrutiny. It's enemies. It's the government. It's a life that will test you. I can protect you, but protection isn't the same as peace. He stepped closer, so close she felt the heat of him. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn you, he said. I will build you a future with clean hands even if it costs me power. I will not let you regret choosing me. Amina looked at the tunnel, then back at him. She thought about the Silver Palms clock, about 11:47 p.m., about how 1 minute had split her life into before and after. I'm not promising you forever if you don't mean it, she said. I mean it, June answered. Every day, every breath. Amina finally opened her mouth and said the word that would change everything again. Yes. June didn't smile first. He sagged, like the answer had pulled something heavy out of him. Then he smiled slow, disbelieving, dangerous in the way relief can be. He slid the ring on her finger with hands that didn't shake. 5 months, Amina murmured, half laughing, half terrified. This is insane. It's us, he said, and kissed her like an oath. And somewhere deep in her bones, Amina knew she'd just stepped into a story that didn't do safe endings. The wedding took place in a garden Amina hadn't known existed, a private estate in the hills, where money whispered instead of shouted. 50 guests. No media. Security that made the Secret Service look casual. Amina wore ivory silk that cost more than her first car. June wore black and looked at her like he was salvation and damnation wrapped in lace. They exchanged vows under cherry blossoms while men with guns watched the perimeter. Romantic and terrifying in equal measure, which felt appropriate for everything they'd become. The reception blurred. Champagne and congratulations from people whose names meant nothing and everything. Sorahan managed the chaos with military precision. June never let go of Amina's hand. Regrets? He murmured during their first dance. Ask me in 50 years. I'll still be asking in 51. Married life meant learning to navigate an empire. June kept his promise about honesty, showed her everything. The legitimate businesses that funded their lifestyle. The gray area operations that made him powerful. The connections that made him untouchable. I'm working toward legitimate, he told her one night in their penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city that glittered like scattered diamonds. 5-year plan. Maybe 10, but I will get us clean, Amina. I swear it. She believed him because she had to. Because the alternative meant she'd married a monster who would never change. Amina used her freedom carefully. Started a consulting business helping small restaurants improve operations. June provided capital and connections. Within a year, she had 15 clients. Within 2, she needed to hire staff. "You're good at this," June said, reading her quarterly report with genuine pride. "I learned from the best." She kissed him. Morally questionable billionaires make excellent teachers. Former morally questionable. He pulled her into his lap. "I'm reformed now. Practically a saint. You moved $3 million through a shell company in the Caymans last week. A reformed saint. Still working on it." But he was working on it. Amina watched him systematically dismantle the more dangerous parts of his empire, severing ties with clients who dealt in violence, closing operations that couldn't withstand legal scrutiny. It was slow, careful, and occasionally terrifying when someone didn't want to let go of their meal ticket. The first death threat arrived on their 2nd anniversary. Just a note slipped under their door. Reformers don't live long. June hired more security. Amina learned to check her car for tamperers and tampering. Their love story came with a body count they tried not to think about. "We could run," she said one night, watching him work through contracts at 2 a.m. "Disappear. Start over somewhere quiet." I thought about it. June set down his pen. "But running means letting them win. Means all the work to go legitimate was for nothing. Means the people who depend on me, the ones trying to build honest lives, lose their chance. So we stay and fight. We stay and build something better." He pulled her close, and she felt his heartbeat against her cheek. "I love you, Amina. More than power, more than money, more than my own life. If you want to run, we run. But if you'll stand with me, I think we can actually change things." She thought about the tunnel, about the choice to run toward fire instead of away from it. "I didn't save you just so you could play it safe," she said. His kiss tasted like gratitude and promise. They stayed. They built. They fought. And for 3 years, they won. The FBI came at dawn. 18 agents, 3 vehicles, enough firepower to start a small war. Amina woke to June's hand over her mouth and Sorahan already in the room, phone pressed to her ear, coordinating lawyers with the efficiency of a general deploying troops. "Don't say anything," June whispered. "Not one word. Understand?" She nodded, watched through the bedroom window as men in windbreakers swarmed their home like locusts. They had a warrant. RICO charges, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. The kind of charges that meant the government thought you were running a criminal enterprise. They weren't wrong. June, dressed in a suit like he was going to a board meeting instead of a perp walk, kissed Amina once soft and final and let them cuff him without resistance. "I love you," he said as they led him away. "Remember that." The trial lasted 4 months. Federal prosecutors presented evidence dating back a decade, money trails, witness testimony, recorded conversations. They painted June as a kingpin who'd built his empire on extortion, money laundering, and racketeering. The defense countered with reformation evidence, character witnesses, proof of legitimate business operations. The jury deliberated for 6 days, guilty on 14 counts. The sentencing hearing felt like watching someone die in slow motion. The judge acknowledged June's efforts to go legitimate but couldn't ignore the years of criminal conduct that preceded them. 10 years in federal prison, eligible for parole after 7 with good behavior. Amina didn't cry. Couldn't afford to. Not with cameras recording every reaction. Reporters hungry for the fallen queen's tears. June found her eyes across the courtroom. Mouthed 3 words. "Wait for me." She mouthed back. "Always." The media frenzy lasted weeks. Every tabloid wanted the love story angle, the waitress who married a mobster, the wife who stood by her criminal husband. Amina ignored them all. Hired a publicist to handle statements. Focused on keeping June's legitimate businesses running. Visiting day at FCI Sheridan came every week. Wednesday afternoons. Amina never missed one. The first time she saw him in prison khakis, her heart almost stopped. June had lost weight. The sharp edges of his face had gone sharper. But his eyes, those remained unchanged. "You should divorce me," he said through the plexiglass. "Start over. Find someone who won't spend a decade behind bars. Is that what you want? I want you to be happy." "Then stop suggesting I leave." Amina pressed her palm to the glass. "I chose you in a tunnel fire, June Park. I chose you at our wedding. I'm choosing you now. 10 years is nothing. We'll survive it." His palm met hers on the other side. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." They talked for an hour. About her business, now managing 23 clients. About his prison routine, he'd started teaching financial literacy to other inmates. About their future, the home they'd build, the life they'd reclaim. When visiting hours ended, Amina walked to her car with her head high. Let the photographers take their pictures. Let the judgment rain down. She had made her choice, and she would stand by it. 7 years, 86 months, 374 visits. Amina learned to navigate a life split between prison visiting rooms and boardroom meetings. Her consulting business expanded into something larger, Row Solutions, specializing in helping ex-convicts start legitimate businesses. Poetic justice, she called it. June called it perfect. You're building what I tried to build, he said during year 3, his voice proud through the phone. But you're doing it right. Legal. Clean. I had a good teacher. She smiled at the irony. Even if he occasionally broke federal law. Occasionally is generous. They wrote letters. Hundreds of them. June described prison, the violence he avoided, the books he read, the man he was becoming in the cage. Amina described freedom, the clients she helped, the advocacy work she'd started, the testimony she'd given to Congress about criminal justice reform. You're famous now, June wrote in year 5. Saw you on the news. You were magnificent. Made those senators look like children. Learned from the best negotiator I know, she wrote back. Even if he's currently wearing an ankle monitor in my nightmares. Year 6 brought the parole hearing preparations, and year 7 brought the parole hearing itself. Amina sat in the front row, hands folded, heart hammering. June presented evidence of rehabilitation educational programs completed, counseling sessions attended, a flawless disciplinary record. He'd become a model prisoner. The board reviewed his file, asked questions about remorse, about future plans, about whether he truly understood the harm he'd caused. I built an empire on moral compromise, June said, his voice clear and steady. I told myself I was providing for people who had no other options, that I was creating opportunity, but the truth is I was perpetuating a system that keeps people trapped in cycles of crime and poverty. He looked at Amina. My wife showed me a better way. Not through lectures or judgment, but through action. She took everything, I built the resources, the connections, the money, and transformed it into something that actually helps people escape the life I used to profit from. If you grant me parole, I will spend the rest of my life supporting that work. Not as penance, as purpose. The board deliberated for 20 minutes. Parole granted. Release date, 14 weeks. Amina waited in the parking lot until June's lawyer emerged with the news. Then she sat in her car and finally cried 7 years of held breath, releasing in great, shuddering sobs. She'd kept her promise, and soon he'd be free. The final weeks crawled. Amina prepared everything, hired additional staff for the business, found them a new home outside the city, planned the life they'd build in the aftermath. June prepared too, completed every requirement, attended every session, became the poster child for rehabilitation that prosecutors hate and reformers love. The night before his release, Amina couldn't sleep. Just sat on their new porch, the one overlooking trees instead of skyscrapers, and thought about the tunnel, about choices made in fire, about love that survived concrete walls and federal charges. At 6 a.m., she drove to FCI Sheridan for the last time. June walked out at 8:47 a.m. wearing civilian clothes Amina had brought the week before. 7 years older, grayer at the temples. But his eyes found hers immediately, and the smile that broke across his face made her forget every lonely Wednesday, every difficult night, every moment she doubted they'd survive this. He crossed the parking lot in 12 steps, pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in 7 years, kissed her without plexiglass between them. I'm home, he whispered against her lips. Welcome back, she whispered back. They drove away from the prison in silence, hands clasped, future spread before them like an unwritten page. 7 years had changed them both. But some things, the important things, remained exactly the same. The Park Row Center for Second Chances opened on a Tuesday in March, 8 months after June's release. Converted warehouse in the industrial district, the same neighborhood where his father had died 30 years earlier. Poetic symmetry. The center provided job training, financial literacy, legal aid, and business development resources for formerly incarcerated individuals trying to rebuild their lives. Funded by the liquidation of June's remaining holdings and managed by Amina's team, their shared mission made manifest. Opening day brought press coverage Amina had learned to manage. Cameras captured the ribbon cutting. Reporters interviewed participants in the first training program. Local politicians showed up for photo opportunities and actually seemed sincere about the work. But the moment that mattered came at sunset, after the crowd had dispersed and only the core team remained. Amina stood at the podium one last time, looking out at the handful of people who'd believed in this vision from the beginning. June sat in the front row beside Sora Han, who'd somehow survived everything and now served as the center's operations director. 10 years ago, I was a waitress at the Silver Palm Diner, Amina began. I had student loans I couldn't pay, dreams I couldn't reach, and a life that felt like treading water. Then a tunnel exploded, and I made a choice that changed everything. She found June's eyes. I ran toward the fire instead of away from it. I saved a man I didn't know. And that man, brilliant, complicated, occasionally criminal, showed me that one moment of courage can redirect the entire trajectory of your life. People laughed softly. June smiled. We've walked through fire together since then. Real fire in that tunnel. Metaphorical fire during a trial and a prison sentence and 7 years of separation. But we're still here. Still building. Still fighting for the belief that people deserve second chances. Amina's voice grew stronger. This center exists because we both got second chances. June got a chance to rebuild his life on legitimate ground. I got a chance to build something that matters. And now we're going to make sure other people get those same opportunities, regardless of their past, regardless of their mistakes, regardless of what society says they deserve. She descended the podium and walked to June. He stood, took her hand, and together they faced the room. One moment of courage, Amina repeated. That's all it takes to change everything, to save a life, to start a movement, to build a future worth fighting for. Outside, the city lights flickered to life. Inside, the center glowed with possibility. Sora Han raised a champagne glass. To second chances. To courage, someone else added. To love that survives hell, another voice called out. But Amina and June just held hands and smiled, because they didn't need toasts. They'd lived the story, survived the fire, built the future from ash and determination, and a single choice made in a burning tunnel. Later, when everyone had left and they walked through the empty center one last time before locking up, June stopped in the main hall. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Running into that tunnel? Saving me? Amina thought about the question. About the years of struggle and sacrifice. About the price they'd both paid for that moment of courage. Every choice has consequences, she said finally. Ours just had bigger ones than most. That's not an answer. No. She turned to face him fully, this man who'd promised to ruin her life, and somehow made it extraordinary instead. I don't regret it. Not the tunnel, not the trial, not the waiting. All of it brought us here, to this center, to this moment, to a life where we actually make a difference. June pulled her close, and they stood in the center they'd built from wreckage and hope. I love you, he said. Simple words, heavy with history. I know, Amina kissed him. You've been telling me since the hospital. I'll keep telling you for the next 50 years. Good, she smiled against his lips. I'm holding you to that. They locked up the center and drove home through streets that held their history, the tunnel, now repaired. The hospital where everything started. Koreatown restaurants where they'd fallen in love. The courthouse where they'd lost and won in equal measure. Their new home waited in the hills, smaller than the penthouse, quieter than their old life, but filled with the kind of peace that can only come after surviving storms. Amina and June Park had run into fire together, had burned, had survived, had rebuilt, and they were just getting started. The story that began with an explosion ended with construction of a center, of a life, of a future built on the radical belief that people can change, that love can endure, and that one moment of courage can illuminate everything that follows. Outside their bedroom window, the city glowed. Inside, two people who'd refused to walk away from fire held each other and dreamed of everything they'd build in the light.